Welcome to Pioneer Mindset, a place where we challenge our mindset and address the discomfort in both business and life by finding clarity resulting in bold conviction. I'm your host, Garrett Ruskamp, fifth-generation farmer, husband, and father from rural Nebraska. Whether you're navigating frustration from past decisions or worry about the uncertainty you face today in your business, we're going to learn from our struggles and take on new challenges with a resilient mindset. Join me as I share my journey of struggles I've faced in agriculture as a farmer and family man. I'm ready to dive into honest conversations to tackle the mindsets surrounding key issues that rural ag business owners face that will ultimately help you gain control, leading to a profitable and sustainable business. Let's adapt to Pioneer Mindset and get to it. Welcome back, everyone. For today's episode, I want to talk about a book that I listened to, and I always say listen to because I often don't take the time to actually sit down and read a book, although I would like to enjoy it. It suits my schedule better just to actually listen to different books, audiobooks. And so this particular book, I've actually listened to it a couple times already, and I've really enjoyed it. So the book is called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif. Now, I've actually really enjoyed a lot of the content or the different podcast materials, the books, all the stuff that Jocko Willink has put out. And just a little bit about Jocko Willink and even Leif, as they're both retired Navy SEALs. And so they definitely see the world in a different perspective. They've definitely been through a lot. And so this book really talks about the 4 laws of combat. And so I wanted to kind of dive into those, but just also to kind of take a step back with Jocko Willink. And he's got a podcast. He's written many books. And what I really like about them is they're completely different to anything that I'm really used to. They're not related to agriculture. They're not related to farming, ranching, whatever, the ag sector, all the content that I'm used to consuming, it's completely different. And so that's why I kind of like it. And it really makes it easy for me to consume because it's different and it gives a different perspective. Also, when they're talking about these books, these 2 Navy SEALs, they were a big part of some of the operations over in Iraq and different things with the war in Iraq. And they went through a lot. So that's what this book really talks about. And they talk about different experiences. And really gives you, like I said, perspective, because when they talk about these 4 laws of combat, I mean, they're principles, they're the extreme ownership principles. And, really, if they didn't take these seriously, they didn't do their job right, it led to death. I mean, or it led to, it's a life or death situation. And it really makes it very serious, but it also gives, like I said, perspective to the things that we go through on a day-to-day basis, because I think we put a lot more weight on some of our struggles than we really should. They don't do their job right. They don't have their teammates back. I mean, it could end very badly. Whereas if we don't do our job right, maybe something gets messed up on the farm, piece of equipment gets broke, or that field doesn't get planted right. It's really, like I said, kind of an eye-opener that there's a lot of other things out in the world that are worse than what we go through on a day-to-day basis. A lot of the struggles that we face day-to-day basis. I don't want to take away the weight of those struggles, but at the same time, we honestly have first world struggles, which is not a bad thing, let's be honest. So just one thing I wanted to mention here as we get started, and I want to just, like I said, I've listened to this book a couple times, found a lot of value in it, and what's nice about it is all the things that he talks about, the extreme ownership principles. Yes, they are the 4 laws of combat, related to combat situations, but you can take these and apply them to day-to-day life, especially in the business. And that's one thing that he's actually done now is he's taken a lot of the things that he's learned, and albeit they apply just directly to business. And so he's helped a lot of businesses with some of the principles that he's learned. And so that's why I think it's really great. That's something why I also really enjoyed the book, is because it does relate back to business and back to life. It's not strictly talking about, combat and war stories and all that stuff that's unrelatable. It's definitely relatable back to life. And so that's why I wanted to kind of dive into it a little bit and kind of share my experiences, my takeaway on these 4 laws of combat. So we're going to start with the first one here. It's called cover and move. Basically, to kind of sum it up, teamwork is essential to winning. So let's just think about this. When they gave their example, they were telling different stories about when they were in Ramadi in Iraq and the different situations that they were in. And you literally have to cover and move when you're trying to move around and be tactical and different things like that. And so let's think about in our situation with maybe in your business, you got to use teamwork to cover and move, to to keep moving in your business. Maybe that looks like trying to help your teammate out. Maybe you're actually helping them with a task that's their responsibility, but you're helping them in order for the betterment of the company, because you're really both trying to get to the same place, trying to strive for the same success, the same goal, whatever that end goal looks like. You're both trying to get to that same thing. And so it's using your team to basically get to a winning situation for all involved. And that honestly might mean maybe you're not winning yourself personally. So what I'm thinking about here is maybe you're literally trying to put others in front of yourself, just like I said, for the betterment of the team. So I think that's a pretty important one, cover and move. Obviously, when it comes to combat, that's pretty important because you got to cover and move to honestly stay alive. And a lot of times when it comes to business and some of our situations we come to on the farm and the ranch, maybe we get into some pretty tough times where you need to literally cover and move. You need to help each other out to get through those difficult times. And that might be physically getting the work done, getting the job done, but that might also mean like helping pick your teammates up. Maybe they're going through a tough time. You need to help pick them up for the betterment of the company, the betterment of the business, betterment of each other. So I think that's a good one there to start off with is cover and move. The next one that I want to talk about here is called simple. It's just that. It's simple. Complexity is the enemy of execution, is how they kind of describe that. And so you can definitely think about in combat when they were talking about this is how many times if you overcomplicate a situation, could that literally be the detriment to the operation, to whatever they're trying to accomplish. So let's take this into consideration. Maybe you've got maybe you're a team leader of your business and you've got teammates under you, you've got employees, whatever that looks like, and you are trying to give them a task. You're trying to teach them how to do something, and you're going into extreme detail and you're making it super complicated when it really doesn't have to be. Maybe it's just a matter of trying to break it down, really talk to them. You don't want to talk to them necessarily at like say a fifth grade level, but you need to make it simple so it's easy to understand. So that way there's literally no confusion, because that's what we're trying to take out is the confusion. You need to make sure that they understand exactly what they're responsible for, and that way they can really digest it easily, and then they can really take ownership of it and go execute that. And so like I said, complexity is the enemy of execution. So we need to keep things simple. You've always heard that the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. So I think that's also one that can apply is just to literally keep it simple. Now the next one here would be prioritize and execute. This one I think is a really good one. So how they sum this up was, there are times when human beings may feel submerged by demands, challenges, and uncertainties. I want to ask you, when was the last time that you felt overwhelmed or submerged by everything that you had to do, everything that was thrown on your plate? Honestly, for me, it's probably not that long ago. We're in the busy season right now. There's a million tasks to do on a day-to-day basis. So especially when, maybe you're up against a rain delay, or not necessarily rain delay, but there's rain in the forecast and we need to get as much done as we can in this short amount of window. And so you feel overwhelmed with all the challenges that you're facing on the day-to-day basis, and you just feel like you're submerged and you don't know where to go. You don't know what to do first. This is where prioritize and execute can really be essential, because you need to take into consideration everything that you have to do. Now you need to prioritize that. You need to prioritize what needs to be done first. What's the top priority? What is something that if I don't do this, there's going to be implications. There's going to be definitely challenges. There's going to be pushback, and it's definitely going to not get us to where we want to go. You need to really prioritize your different roles and responsibilities or tasks that you need to do on a day-to-day basis. Because let's be honest here also, we get sidetracked. We lose focus, and maybe we're doing things that do not need to be at the top of our priority. And so I think it's important for us to keep from getting overwhelmed, is we need to prioritize what's most important here. What do I need to accomplish first? What does the team need to accomplish first? And then we need to execute on those things. And it is kind of that simple, is that we need to prioritize and then we need to execute. Now, it's easy to go ahead and prioritize everything. I shouldn't say easy, but it's one thing to go ahead and prioritize everything on our roles and responsibilities, things that we need to get done, things that come onto our plate. But then it's the next thing is to execute. And sometimes I think we forget about that last one. There's execute. It's always easy to sit down at a Monday morning meeting. Let's sit down and let's plan everything out for the week and what needs to be done first, this and this and that. But then all of a sudden we forget about the execution. You're not going to get any results if you don't execute on the things that need to be done. So I think that's a big one to remember, because I feel like all too often, especially in my life, we get just really submerged, really bogged down everything that we need to do, because there's constantly fires, different challenges that come onto our plate. We've already got our tasks that we need to do that we kind of plan for. But then what really throws us off is when you got that random thing that happens where you need to go address that fire that comes up, that the cows that need to be taken care of because they just got out, or the piece of equipment that breaks down and you need to get that fixed now so that way you can get on to the next thing. There's always going to be that challenge that comes up, and we just remember we need to prioritize those challenges, and then we need to execute upon those. So the last law that we have here is decentralized command. Empower everyone to make decisions. And I think that statement there is pretty important, that empower everyone to make decisions. So when I think of decentralized command, I think of an operation that basically can run without its leader, or maybe without its business owner, or maybe the visionary of the company, that can operate without them being there. So you think of like maybe a big company, you think of like maybe the CEO or somebody that's in a high level management, but they've also got managers underneath them and employees underneath those that they can leave, they can be gone for a week and everything still functions as it should. Well, that's how a business should run. That's pretty common sense, we think, in our head. Well, how often in our ag businesses, our farming, ranching operations, to where, maybe it's just us, maybe we don't have much of a team, but we maybe have maybe one or two employees, or maybe it's just you and your dad. And you think to yourself, okay, how am I going to get anything accomplished if I'm gone? I've got nobody else to work on things, or maybe the people that I do have, I haven't lined out the roles and responsibilities for them. I haven't made clear systems and processes. I haven't opened, I don't have an open line of communication for them so that way they can succeed when I'm gone. Essentially, a lot of times, most of our operations, farming, ranching, our ag businesses, we feel like if we leave, everything's going to burn down. Nothing's going to happen. There's going to be no progress made. And that's because we make everything a centralized operation. And I think we often do this because there's a couple reasons in my mind, is because we can't trust anybody else to do the things that we want them to do, or maybe we're very particular and they're not going to do things the way we want them to do. This is the one that I kind of struggle with because it's mostly me and my dad when it comes to the day-to-day operations. But a lot of times I am very particular when it comes to getting things done. And my dad is okay with me handling things as far as, maybe certain ways that we do certain things. And I'm talking maybe a certain way we plant fields, certain way we record documentations when it comes to planting fields. That's a big one that we're dealing with here, is I would love for my dad to take on that stuff, go plant the beans, but we got to make sure we record everything a certain way. And I'm always a little bit irritated when things don't get done a certain way. Well, is that his fault, or is that my fault for not having a clear system and process in place to get that accomplished? Or maybe having a nice open communication in place, or maybe I'm reacting a certain way when that person calls me, making them more apt to not call if they have an issue. That's another one there I want to hit on, is because I feel like maybe it's our attitude or the culture within our work environment is we don't make it easy for other people to ask questions or get feedback and make it more of a healthy environment for learning, so that way we can create more of a decentralized command, because most of our operations are centralized. They evolve around us. And that's the next thing here, is I feel like we want to feel like we're needed. We want to feel like we're the one in control, like we're the ones that ultimately built this business. And if we're not the ones in control, then what do we really have? If I'm not the one out there doing the manual physical labor, planting the crop, harvesting the corn, feeding the cattle, if I'm not the one doing that, is it really my operation? Am I really in control? I feel like that's something that we can really wrestle with and struggle, especially as you get to kind of that size of operation to where you're looking to grow, but you don't want to let go to grow. That's another problem. Maybe if you're already in a higher, maybe I'd say a little bit bigger operation to where you do have team members and you're used to them taking on challenges and maybe getting after things, it's sometimes easier to actually let them do that because you maybe already you're in a management situation where you're okay with letting them do things. But I think for some of us, if it's just say us and our dads or just a smaller operation, we're not used to letting go of things, letting go of responsibilities, letting go of tasks. So I think it's important for us to remember that we have to let go to grow. And in order to get a decentralized command, we have to let go to grow. So that's a big one there I want to hit on is the decentralized command, because that can really push us forward, because if we do want to grow, we need to be able to create that decentralized command, create that environment, create the systems and processes, the open line of communication in order to get to that point to where we can have a decentralized command. And I think that's also to come back to the empower everyone to make decisions. That's a big one there, is because, for me, I've been trying really hard to create some systems and processes in our operation. So that way I'm not 100% have to be there. So that way I can let somebody else take on the responsibilities. That way I can focus my time and energy elsewhere. But I think we also need to, when we do create that system to process, I think it's important for it to be very detailed so it doesn't leave any question. But at the same time, we can't make it so detailed, so locked in place that we don't give them any power to make any decisions, because the decisions that they make is when they're going to have the learning experiences. They're going to learn maybe that whether they did it the right way, whether they did it the wrong way. They're going to learn based off the decisions that they're making. So I want to kind of hit on that one. I think that's very important. Lastly here, those were the 4 laws of combat, kind of the basic principles. But the book is called Extreme Ownership for a reason. I think in our life, it's important that we take extreme ownership in everything that happens in our life. And that involves, in my opinion, when we talk about extreme ownership, that comes down to not blaming other people. You're basically taking responsibility for everything that happens to you on a day-to-day basis, everything that happens in your life. You're taking ownership and you're taking responsibility for that. Just to kind of put that in perspective, some different things that happen, I think your attitude, whether it's a good thing that happens to you, a bad thing that happens to you, your attitude is going to dictate how that outcome is perceived in the long run, how you go through that outcome, how can you go through that challenge. Or maybe it's a good thing. You need to take ownership of the different things that happen to you, and your attitude is the first thing that you can do in taking ownership. You need to control your attitude. You need to try to have a positive attitude, obviously, but you need to make sure you're really being considerate and being aware of the attitude you're having with, whether it's, like I said, a challenge or maybe it's a good thing. So I think it's important for us to take ownership and be aware of our attitudes when it comes to different challenges and situations. And so the one thing here when I want to hit on with it when it comes to extreme ownership is it took me a lot to come around to this idea. And a lot of the challenges that we went through back when we were expanding, we went through the expansion and then we went through the hardship where we had to deal with all of the challenges that we had faced. And it was easy for us to sit here and blame the downturn in the markets, the poor crop prices, the poor cattle prices, the death loss that we had, sit there and blame certain things, and it's always like, well, when you point a finger at something else, you got at least 3 of them pointing back at you. So you got to remember that you need to take ownership for everything that happens to you. And once you do that, I think you're going to be surprised of the different outcomes that happen from then on forward. And so, but the last thing I want to hit on here when it comes to taking extreme ownership is this can be taken too far. This can be taken too far because I feel like, once again, when we went through all those struggles, I definitely wanted to blame somebody else because I feel like it's so much easier to blame somebody else. But at the end of the day, when we built our hoop building, when we made that expansion, I knew that those were the decisions that set us up for almost failure to where we were going in the bank, having hard conversations of like looking at our balance sheet, losing equity, all of this debt is just growing and struggling to pay back our debt, struggling because our line of credit's maxed out, not knowing what we're going to do. All of those challenges that we had to face, I took ownership of those on myself because I was the son of the father that wanted to get his son back to the operation. I was the one that wanted to come back to the operation, work my tail off. I was naive in everything that we did when we expanded, thought everything would just work out. If you work hard, everything would be fine and you'd make money. And so I took ownership of our situation but probably almost in a negative way because I saw everything as my fault. And you got to be damn careful for that because that can get you in a pretty depressed state pretty fast. So that's kind of the one thing I want to hit on there as we wrap this up is I think it's very important to take ownership of the different situations in your life, but take ownership in a positive way. Don't take ownership in a negative way. Don't put it upon yourself and be in a pity party and look down on yourself and be sad for yourself. You need to take ownership for your situation that you're in and realize that this is my situation. I need to own it, but I need to work on changing it. If you don't like it, you need to change it. So that's kind of the one thing I want to wrap this up is just to take ownership, but then be aware that maybe the ownership that you're taking, how is that affecting your attitude? How is that affecting your mental state? How is that affecting where you want to go in the future? Because that can be good and bad. If you take too much ownership in it, it gets you bogged down and you take it in a negative way. Just to be positive in everything that you do. Be positive in trying to where you want to go in the future. And remember that you need to take ownership. And so that's kind of where I want to wrap this up. I think these books are really good that they have. I think this different podcasts that they have. Look up Jocko Willink. He's got a lot of good information out there, a lot of good information that pertains to business, but also life. And so I really hope that you resonated with some of these different principles and you found value in them. And we will catch you next time. Thanks for tagging along with me today as we sharpened our mindsets. If you've gained insight from today's episode, be sure to take a screenshot to share or send this episode to somebody who might also find value in it. For more, follow me on Instagram at Garrett Ruskamp or on Facebook, and join me next time for more conviction through clarity.